All right, back for part three. Um, you're going to want to watch parts one and two to understand what's going on here. I'm not going to spend too much time elaborating on the context of where we currently are. Basically, what we need to do is um, we're going to monitor the eDrum kit through the audio from the drum brain. We're going to simultaneously record the midi as midi in the DAW over USB. We're going to simultaneously record that and the audio from this large diaphragm condenser, which is just going to capture the audio of me smacking the pads. But what's changed in part three is that we have a dramatically increased buffer size um, on our audio interface. And for good measure, I've also added a bunch of tracks with CPU intensive plugins. So we will do the same thing. We'll capture the MIDI and the audio, take multiple measurements of the latency, and see how that compares to previous states of the project, and see if we can nail down what, if anything, um, MIDI over USB latency is dependent on. Not if anything. It's definitely dependent on some things. The speed of light's involved, you know. So let's get to the bottom of this. See you in Reaper.
Okay, so so here we are in Reaper. Just did the recording. Um, some important notes about the current state of the project. The most important thing is notice that we have. Oh no, this isn't even in frame. First thing to notice is that the buffer size has been greatly increased. I believe it was, what was it, 256 before, 256 samples. Now it's 2048 samples. The latency before was on the order of 2 or 3 milliseconds as reported by Reaper. Now it's 22, 21 milliseconds. I'm not sure what the tilde 22 slash means, but call it 21 milliseconds. So we've nearly increased our reported latency by an order of magnitude. I did this recording with the master. So, oops. Wait, there we go. I did this recording with the master bus plugins engaged. I don't even know what I have on there. Okay, span, G-comp, and limiter, the Pro L2 limiter. So I did this recording with the master bus plugins engaged. Obviously not advised. Um, I also, as is being shown here, I duplicated this piano track one, two, three, four times. So I duplicated it 4 times. The original piano track just had so this is triggering a VSTI with MIDI, and then it just had a Pro C2 compressor on it. The the every single one of these 4 duplicates have both of those, and also an instance of Soothe that I spent like a few minutes just tinkering with and dialing it a bit. Notice it's hard, which I think maybe might use more CPU. I don't know. But so each of those duplicates, in addition to the 2 plugins that exist on the original, have an instance of Soothe, a clipper that is also somewhat dialed in, and an instance of Pro L2 that is also somewhat dialed in, but set to 101 volume. And all of these duplicates were, you know, really, really ducked during recording. They were ducked like minus 50 dB, so minus 51. I'll show you these were all really ducked. I assume, surely, ducking with this, just ducking them with the volume knob like that does not affect how much CPU resources are being consumed by the plugins on the channel. So that sets us up for what's different about part 3 here in this experiment. I was monitoring the drums, the eDrums, through the audio from the drum brain. Obviously, I'm not even going to set up that context. Let's just look at the latency. Oops, first I gotta do this thing again. I gotta give the MIDI some thickness. Okay, we're good there. Okay, so now let's start taking some measurements. First sample, as we've come to do. Hang on a second, let me just make sure. Okay, that's not really close. There we go. So now, I've learned after 2 parts of this that exactness doesn't matter. 7 milliseconds. Okay, we're gonna record this off screen again. Well, somewhat good sign. That's the same measurement as our first, very first attempt in part 1. So again, we'll take 5 measurements again, evenly spread throughout. So let's call our second measurement about here. Doesn't really matter that much. Okay. That's good. And we have 6 milliseconds. Let's record that. 2 measurements. Okay, it looks like the latency is consistent, which is amazing. It looks like the latency is independent of buffer size and of reported interface latency, which is um, interesting. It's very interesting. I wonder if the DAW is compensating for that or what. Whatever. We won't think too deeply about it. We will just take the measurements and proceed with what they suggest. So let's see, measurement number 3, about right there. And another 7 milliseconds. I'm definitely glad to see that apparently the latency is not dependent on buffer size. That surprises me a little bit, but I guess and another interesting thing is that I suppose I wasn't paying super close attention. I think I was though. I think I would have noticed. But when I was recording with these settings, with a big buffer size and a big reported conversion latency, the the drums felt good. Oh, you know what? When I was recording these, I forgot to mute the I forgot to not monitor the large diaphragm condenser. So I was hearing all the smacking. I wonder if that was clouding my judgment of the responsiveness of tracking in this way. After we finish taking the measurements, I'll go back and make sure I'm not monitoring the large diaphragm condenser while tracking and see if that makes a big difference. I'm sure it will. It must, right? Okay, so how many measurements have we taken? 1, 2, 3. This one. It's our 4th, and it is another 7. Lucky number 7. Okay. 54. Okay, our last measurement wants to be the end here. Surely that is accurate enough, right? Yep, another 7. Wow, okay. Okay, so yeah, the average, so we had a 7 milliseconds, 6 milliseconds, 777. So the average of this is like 6.9 something. So it's, yeah, we're honing in on a nudge amount that makes sense with my system. I'll report back with whether the perceived latency during tracking was tolerable with these buffer settings.
So yeah, I recorded. I tracked drums again without monitoring the large diaphragm condenser, and it seemed perfectly fine, which is very strange. I didn't notice any latency. Obviously, there was no latency from when I played the drums, because I'm just monitoring the audio from the drum brain. But I thought that I would be triggering early, perhaps, because there would be a significant amount of latency from when I was recording the hit versus when the audio was actually playing through all the processing and everything. I guess since we're purely in the digital realm, that doesn't matter. It's strange. I haven't completely wrapped my head around it, but suffice to say that I tested it, and then it felt good tracking, and then I again measured the latency between the audio recorded from the large diaphragm condenser and the audio recorded, the MIDI recorded from the USB MIDI out of the drum brain, and we are in the precisely the same ballpark as all the other latency measurements. So it appears that the buffer size actually does not impact MIDI recording latency, eDrum MIDI recording latency. If anyone thinks I'm wrong there, or anyone can add some color to this situation, I'm all ears. I'm just some dude in his basement doing some experiments. So yeah, we'll have to have a conversation in the comments. I definitely read all the comments. So yeah, let me know. Different day, different mic in the stand, brief edit. I realized I think it was silly to ever think that the buffer size of the audio interface would have anything to do with MIDI recording latency. It's a whole separate signal chain. The recorded MIDI from the drums brain box doesn't hit the interface at all. It's just MIDI over USB straight into the motherboard of the computer. So it makes sense that that's not in play. But yeah, I think the latency that I'm seeing is just the latency over USB into whatever MIDI processing software exists in the DAW. So yeah, just wanted to add a little edit there that it's like, well, yeah, of course. In hindsight, of course, the audio interface buffer size has nothing to do with it. But I think it's always good to test these things because you never know what kind of weird, unknown, complicated interactions are going on with the software or hardware in your system. So glad I tested it. Well, that's part 3. That about does it for my eDrum latency experimentation. Thanks for hanging with me. Like I said before, leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions or arguments or anything. I'll definitely try to read all the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more things. Bye.